Hi, my name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 years old. I live in a quiet apartment in Portland, Oregon, with my rescue dog Maple, and a life that finally feels safe. I work as a licensed social worker, helping children in difficult home situations. People always ask me why I chose that career. I never tell them the real reason. But today I'm going to tell you everything. Because today I'm going to tell you what my father did to me when I was 9 years old. What my mother said when it happened. And how, 22 years later, I made sure the whole world knew the truth about the Carter family. The family everyone in our town thought was perfect. This is not about exaggeration. This is about a little girl locked outside in a violent thunderstorm for an entire night, soaking wet, terrified, shivering against the back door of her own home. And the two people who were supposed to protect her called it discipline. This is the story of how I made them pay. We lived in Millbrook, Ohio. Population 8,000. My dad, Robert Carter, was a respected man. He coached Little League, volunteered at church, shook hands with every parent at school events and smiled that big warm smile. My kids are my whole world, he'd say. People believed him. My mom, Linda, stayed home, kept the house perfect, brought casseroles to sick neighbors. She smiled too, but her smile never reached her eyes. It was like she was performing a role she'd rehearsed 1,000 times. I have one brother, Marcus, 2 years older, and from the beginning we lived in completely different worlds inside the same house. Marcus was Dad's favorite. Not subtly. Dad was at every one of Marcus's baseball games. He came to exactly one of my soccer games, sat in the back on his phone, and left before it ended. Mom told me afterward, "Daddy's very busy, sweetheart. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about you." That phrase became the soundtrack of my childhood. Every time I needed something, every time I was hurt, the message was always the same. Shrink yourself. Be quiet. Don't be a burden. I learned to be invisible. Got perfect grades hoping maybe they'd notice. Maybe I'd finally matter. I never did. Dad had a quiet temper. He never hit us. Never left a mark. But if Marcus broke something, it was an accident. If I broke something, even a glass, the whole house went silent. Dad would stare at me with this cold, flat look and say very quietly, "Go to your room. Now." Mom never said a word. She just looked down at her plate and wait. And then came the night that broke something inside me forever. It was October, right after Halloween. I was 9. It had been raining all day. Not drizzling but pouring. Dark sky, thunder rolling, the kind that makes the windows shake. Dad and Marcus were watching football. Mom was washing dishes. I was at the kitchen table doing a book report on Charlotte's Web. I loved that book. Charlotte the spider, who did everything for someone she loved, even though nobody ever thanked her. Even though nobody ever saw her. I knocked my backpack off the chair by accident. It hit the floor with a thud. Dad appeared in the doorway. "What did you do?" "I just dropped my bag, Dad. I'm picking it up." The noise. His voice dropped. That voice. "I told you to be quiet. I am so tired of you, Emily. I'm so tired of you." I was 9 years old. And my father had just told me he was tired of me existing. I looked at Mom desperately. She glanced at me, then looked away. Back to the dishes. "Go outside," Dad said. "What?" "You heard me. If you can't be quiet in here, sit outside until you learn to behave." "But Dad, it's raining." "I don't care." He guided me to the back door, opened it. Rain was coming down in sheets. Wind picking up. Thunder cracking close. I was in pajamas. No shoes. No jacket. "Dad, please," I whispered. "I'm sorry. I'll be quiet." He pushed me gently onto the porch. Closed the door. Locked it. Blick. I will never forget that sound. I knocked. Softly at first. "Dad. Please let me in." Nothing. Harder. "Mom. Can you hear me?" Nothing. I pressed my face against the glass. Mom was still at the sink. 15 feet away. I could see the back of her head. "Emom!" I screamed, banging on the glass. She didn't turn around. After a minute, she turned off the kitchen light and left the room. The kitchen went dark. And I was alone. The rain came in sideways. My pajamas soaked through instantly. My feet went numb. Lightning lit up the yard in violent white flashes. Thunder so loud it felt like the sky was tearing apart. I screamed and covered my ears. I tried every door, every window. Everything was locked. So I sat on the porch with my back against the door, pulled my knees to my chest, and I shook. I cried, big, heaving sobs swallowed by the storm. I cried for hours. And then, somewhere around midnight, I stopped. Not because I felt better. Because I had nothing left. I was empty. A small, wet, freezing child, and I understood something no child should ever understand. The people who were supposed to love me didn't care enough to let me inside. I stayed out there until dawn. The storm faded. The sky went from gray to pink to gold. Birds started singing. The back door opened around 6:30. Mom stood there with coffee, fully dressed, like any normal morning. She looked down at me, at my soaked pajamas, my white lips, my swollen eyes. "Oh, Emily, come inside. You must be cold." Like she was just noticing. I walked past her without a word. The warmth hit me and I shook even harder, that deep, bone-level trembling that doesn't stop. Mom wrapped a blanket around me, handed me warm water. Then she knelt down. "What happened last night was your father's way of teaching you a lesson. About respect. About consequences. He's strict but he loves you. You know that, right?" I looked at her calm, composed face. Something cold and hard settled inside me. "It's discipline, sweetheart," she said. "It's not meant to hurt you. Discipline. The word that made everything okay. The word that turned a violent storm into a lesson. That turned a 9-year-old girl's terror into something normal." He nodded. I said nothing. I went to school like it was any other day. For years I carried that night like a stone in my chest. I never told anyone. Mom had told me it was discipline, and I believed her. Or tried to. But I never forgot the sound of that lock clicking shut. And I never stopped flinching during thunderstorms. I left Millbrook after high school. Scholarship to Ohio State. Moved to Portland. Built a life with nothing to do with them. Called home on holidays. Nobody mentioned the porch. It was like it never happened. I was 25 when I started therapy. Dr. Sarah Marsh was the first person I ever told. I sat in her office and cried for the first time in 16 years. When I finished, she said, "Emily, what happened to you was not discipline. It was abuse." Abuse. The word hit me like lightning. I'd spent my whole life believing Mom's version. Dr. Marsh helped me see the pattern, the control, the favoritism, the gaslighting. All connected. All part of the same thing. And then she asked me something I haven't stopped thinking about. "Have you ever asked your brother about his experience?" Took me a year to call Marcus. A year of therapy, of building courage. When I finally called, I got straight to it. "Marcus, the night Dad locked me outside. Do you remember?" A long silence. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I remember. You were home that night." Another pause. Then, "Em, I need to tell you something. I've wanted to tell you for years." "What?" "I heard you. That night. Through the window upstairs. I heard you knocking. I heard you screaming for Mom." The world went still. Dad had told me before dinner, if I interfered he'd kick me out. I was 11. I was terrified. His voice broke. "So I stayed in my room. And I listened to you crying. All night. I've carried that guilt every single day since." We cried together. Two adults crying like the children we'd been in that house. Then Marcus told me something that made my blood run cold. "Last year I went back for Christmas. Dad wasn't home. Mom left her laptop open. There was an email from Dad to someone named Gerald Hoffman." "Who's that?" "Dad's brother. Uncle Gerald. The one Mom said died when Dad was young." Sat up. "Uncle Gerald is dead. He's not him. He's been alive this whole time. Dad's been sending him money for years. Hundreds of thousands. Through hidden accounts Mom doesn't know about." Felt sick. "There's more," Marcus said. I found emails between Mom and Dad about you. They discussed how you were too sensitive and needed to be toughened up. They planned the way they treated you. And his voice hardened. In one email, Dad described the night on the porch. He wrote it like it was a test. He wanted to see how far he could push you before you broke. Test. My father had locked me outside in a violent thunderstorm as a test. To see how far he could push a 9-year-old girl before she shattered. I hung up and sat on my couch for 3 hours, staring at nothing. 22 years of believing I was broken. And the whole time my suffering had been an experiment. I called Dr. Marsh the next morning. She connected me with Catherine Wells, a family law attorney. I told Catherine everything. The abuse, the emails, the hidden money, Dad's description of the storm night as a test. Catherine listened, took notes. When I finished, if we get copies of those emails and financial records, your father faces serious legal consequences. The hidden assets alone are fraud. The abuse documentation is significant. Over the next 6 months, I built a case quietly. Marcus forwarded the emails. I hired a private investigator who confirmed Uncle Gerald was alive in Columbus, receiving regular deposits from Dad for over 15 years. Catherine was building cases for both financial fraud and documented emotional abuse. But I didn't want to just destroy Dad quietly. I wanted him to look at me and hear the truth. Before the confrontation, I made one more call. To Mrs. Dorothy Palmer, my old neighbor 2 houses down. During therapy, a memory had surfaced. Mrs. Palmer's back window faced our yard. She could see the porch. Called her. Mrs. Palmer, do you remember the big storm? October when I was 9. Was. Then softly. Oh, honey. I do remember that night. Could you see anything from your window? Longer pause. Her voice thickened with emotion. I saw you, Emily. I saw you on that porch in the rain. I watched you for about an hour before I called the police. My heart stopped. You called the police. Around 1 in the morning. They sent a patrol car. The officer knocked on your door, and your father answered. Told him it was a misunderstanding, that you'd gone outside to play and fallen asleep. The officer told him to bring you in. Which he did. I don't remember that, I whispered. You were half asleep, sweetheart. But I kept a copy of the police report. Something didn't sit right. I always wondered if you were okay. She mailed it overnight. I had it by Thursday morning. There was an official record. Police report. A neighbor had been worried enough to call authorities about a child sitting in a storm. And my parents had let it disappear. Let me grow up believing I was the problem. While a document proved otherwise. On Saturday afternoon, I walked into my parents' house. Dad was in his recliner watching TV. Mom was in the kitchen. Marcus was on the couch, nervous but steady. He caught my eye and nodded. Dad looked up. Surprise. Confusion. Then something that looked like fear. Emily, what are you doing here? I walked in slowly, sat across from him. Mom appeared in the doorway with her smile. Oh, Emily, what a lovely. Sit down, Mom, I said. My voice was calm, steadier than I'd ever heard it. Both of you. Sit down. They went still. Dad muted the TV. Mom sat next to Marcus. I pulled out the manila folder. Emails, financial records, police report, Catherine's legal notice. I set it on the coffee table. I know everything, I said. Dad's face didn't change. What are you talking about? Uncle Gerald, Dad. Who you told us was dead. Who's been alive this whole time, receiving your money for 15 years. Mom's head snapped toward him. What? The emails, I continued, eyes locked on Dad. Where you and Mom discussed how to handle me. How to toughen me up. Where you described locking me outside as a test. The color drained from his face. And this. I held up the police report. A cop came to this house that night. Mrs. Palmer called them. The officer made you bring me inside. You never told me. You let me spend 22 years believing I was broken. while a police report proved someone cared enough to call for help. Mom made a strangled sound. Robert. What is she talking about? Dad's jaw tightened. He looked at Marcus. The emails are real, Dad, Marcus said quietly. I forwarded them to M and to our lawyer. Our lawyer? Dad's voice rose. What is? Catherine Wells, I said. Family law attorney. She files Monday morning. Financial fraud, the hidden accounts, Uncle Gerald. And emotional abuse. Documented with your own words. Ed stood. This is ridiculous. Out of context. Sit down, Dad. Not a single tremor in my voice. For once in your life, sit down and listen to your daughter. He stared at me. And I saw it clearly. Fear. Real, unmistakable fear. He sat. 22 years ago, you locked me outside in a storm, I said. I was 9. In pajamas. No shoes. I sat on that porch for hours, freezing, terrified. And you were inside watching football. Mom was crying quietly. Mom. You were in the kitchen. I screamed for you. And you turned off the light and walked away. She opened her mouth. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't tell me it was discipline. I have the police report. Have the emails. I have 22 years of evidence that this family made me believe I was broken. The truth is that you were. Silence. Just Mom's crying and the clock on the mantel. The same clock that had been ticking in this room my whole life. Dad stared at the folder. He looked old. Nothing like the man I remembered. What do you want? He asked. Flat. Accountability. I want you to know what you did was wrong. Not discipline. Catherine handles the rest. And if we don't cooperate, everything goes to court. And it goes public. Silence. Mom looked up, face raw. Emily, please. We love you. You love me. I repeated. And my voice cracked. Because there was still a 9-year-old girl inside me who wanted that to be true. Who had wanted it her whole life. Breathe. Steadied myself. If you loved me, I said, you wouldn't have locked me outside. You wouldn't have planned it. You wouldn't have let me spend 22 years believing something was wrong with me. Understood. Picked up my bag. The lawyer will be in touch. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come to Portland. We are done. I walked toward the door. Emily. Dad's voice. Quiet. Almost unrecognizable. Stop. Didn't turn around. I'm sorry, he said. I stood there a long moment. The clock ticked. I know, I said. And I walked out. Closed the door quietly. The way you close a door when you're done with a room forever. Here's what happened after. The lawsuit moved forward. Dad's hidden accounts were exposed. Over $200,000 sent to Uncle Gerald over 15 years. Mom genuinely didn't know about most of it. The marriage didn't survive. She filed for divorce within a month. In the settlement, she got the house and the hidden money. Dad moved into a small apartment. His reputation collapsed. Small towns talk. The man who smiled and shook hands became someone people avoided. The coaching stopped. The volunteering stopped. The big warm smile disappeared. Marcus and I got closer than we'd been since childhood. He's in therapy now, working through his own guilt, his own years of being manipulated, just in a different way. Mom called me once, for months later. I think about you on that porch every single day, she said. And I am ashamed. Not enough. Not close. But something. I went back to Portland. Back to Maple, my quiet apartment, my work with kids who need someone to see them. Someone to believe them. I think about that little girl on the porch sometimes. The one who sat in the rain and the dark and believed it was discipline because her mother told her so. I want to tell her. You were never too sensitive. You were never too much. You were a child who deserved protection. And the people who were supposed to give it to you failed you completely. But you survived. You found the truth. You faced them and you didn't break. You didn't become them. You became someone who opens doors. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 years old. I am no longer the girl who was too much. I am the woman who was finally enough. If you're out there, The kid who was told your pain was dramatic, your feelings too big, your needs inconvenient. Hear this, you matter. What happened to you matters. And when you're ready, you can tell the truth. The truth will set you free. Set me free. The storm is over. And I am finally inside.